His Right Honorable Nyaga, he's a Minister of Cultural Affairs in Kenya. He opened the Relic tour. And he's somebody who has actually done retreats in yoga. He says, I am so excited to be here. But we had in Nairobi about 5,000 people in a weekend. People were waiting for about 3 hours in line just to be able to come and be blessed from the relics. Next slide. Next slide. There you can see the long lines. Next slide. After the Relic tour of Los Angeles, something very interesting happened. We received a phone call about a week after the Relic tour had finished from this man's wife. And she called and said, and I remember him because he was in a wheelchair and he had the catheters or the site where you do dialysis. And he didn't look well, but he was there. And he was there for much of the day, actually. You know, I kept saying, are you okay? Do you need help? Do you need to lie down? He says, no, I'm so happy to be here. Well, a week later, his renal function, which was at end stage, just healed. I called this nephrologist and I said, Dr. Kabede, tell me, in your professional opinion, how likely is it that somebody's renal function, which is end stage and is on dialysis, would go back to normal? He says, well, in my professional opinion, this was a miracle. I didn't use that word, he did. And I said, well, thank you very much. But this was amazing, you know. People who came through the Los Angeles tour, I could see it. Mental healing, emotional healing, back pain disappearing, shoulders healing. I mean, it was all kinds of stories. So, next slide. This is an amazing picture. Now, you will see, we'll spend just a little time here. You'll notice something. Look here. Look at that golden light. And it's blessing this nun. It's a low resolution picture, but if we had to expand these orbs would be unique orbs to each master, okay? There are a lot of anomalous things that happened around the Relic tours. The picture, this was taken by a journalist, and she was really disturbed about her camera. It was brand new. And she kept looking at it and looking at the space and looking at her camera. And my brother says, something seems to be the problem. She says, there are lights in the pictures, but there's nothing here. And he says, let me take a look. And he says, don't delete this. Stop deleting these things. You're capturing something. Her camera had become sensitized. It was a different space, different camera, different everything. So this is a very amazing picture, and he calibrates it on the consciousness. It's like you're looking at God. Don't need a face and I told you, we have a bias with this human flesh and bones. So, beautiful. Next slide. So, ordinary people, I'm no Olympic athlete in meditation, I can assure you. Getting these states that, you know, it took me a week, but I had to actually pray for it to be taken away. When you're a physician in a clinic and you can't understand language, it was blah, 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 blah. It was like that. And I had to tell my patients, slow down, I can't understand you. I can't understand you. Just hold on. And they said something about you is different. And for them, it was very natural. Oh, yeah, this happened to me in church, or this happened to me in a prayer group. It was very interesting. Patients are very open. They got this. But the exceptional healings, is this the brain, or is this something else? And I think we have to question. We have to question the role of the brain and our current way of investigating consciousness. The brain is very important. It's an impressive wiring system. Impressive. We can change things. We can, make it do things with psychedelics. But it is chemistry, my friends, and this is not where consciousness abides. Because the relics are very conscious things. Next slide. So we're talking about mind beyond the body. This is a radical idea, okay? But I think once you begin to do that, now we are way forward. Beyond MRI machines and pretty pictures. They're important, but that's not the whole answer. Next slide. So the first theme was a consciousness beyond the body, beyond the brain. Just park that. So the next question is, can formless things like loving kindness, how can you put that in an object? An object like a relic, or this pen, or this thing. How can you imprint that and it be stable for a long, can it even be done? I mean, that's consciousness. We're not locked into a brain, now we're asking a bigger question. Next slide. To be able to ask such a question, you need a scientist who has the adequate tools, both in the outer realm. Outer realm means he needs to know engineering. He needs to know mathematics. He needs to know statistics. He needs to know how to set up a protocol. And he needs to do all of this without large, proton colliders. We're not talking about quantum mechanics here. We are not talking about the brain. We don't want MRI machines. So it needs a very sophisticated mind. A mind who can bring that outer knowledge and the inner knowledge seamlessly together. And this is the concept of adequatio. How many times have we asked what our scientists, are they really ready to give us the answers? Or are they the geeks in the labs? We need to have scientists who are really awake to ask the really important questions. So the kind of device, Tiller was the one who took this question and said, okay, let's test consciousness out. And he's a material scientist. He's an expert in materials. He knows. So if he looks at this water, he just doesn't see a colorless fluid of this and, quenches your thirst and we can make a nice cup of tea. He sees something much, much more. To a material scientist's mind, this is like a canvas. Let's see what we can do with this water. And what he decided to do was change its pH with nothing but his intention. Now just think about it for a moment. We're in this lab in Stanford and got all these meters and gauges and stuff, and he made this other condition. If we test our consciousness, it has to be with regular instruments. I told you, no Large Hadron Colliders and MRI machines. Regular things you can find in any lab. So it's replicable. That's pretty courageous. So he decided to do target experiments. The first target was water. And he wanted to change the pH of the water. And he realized that you cannot just sit there and intend forever for this water to change its pH. You need a way to objectify your intention. You need a way to measure it. And so he decided to do a really crazy protocol. And in fact, I do have, I have a device, but it's in Joe's home. In all my hurry, I came here. But it looks just like that. It looks pretty much, just think, this is your device, okay? We're going to pretend this is our device. So this is what he did. The first experiment was to change the pH of water, 1 pH up, or 1 pH down from neutral pH, okay? That's a huge signal. You're not talking little noise, random effects. We're talking huge signal. So he wasn't shy about saying, I'm going to change the pH of water without any chemical additions, with just purely intention. And intention is your consciousness at work, okay? Next slide. And this is how he imprinted the device. He took 3 other Stanford graduate students, and they look ordinary people, wear jeans, t-shirts, they're brainiacs, but inside, they were like yogis. Tiller insisted any student that he mentored have a practice of meditation. And even when I went to him, he said, Nisha, I will not work with you unless you begin to do regular meditation. For him, meditation isn't just about relaxation, it's a science protocol. I told you, science and spirit for him are inseparable. You have to do both. Back. Okay. So here we are. This device is sitting in the table. I'm sorry about my pointer. It's not very bright, but there you are. So they'd clear a space in the lab. They'd clear the table, and 4 of them would sit down around the device, and they're sitting there on the table. And they read the intention statement. Tiller created that the pH of this water will go up. The hydrogen ion, to use material science language, will go up by a factor of so much for 1 full pH change. That was his intention. I intend that I will get, my book published in 2019. That's my intention. So we take action. You write it down. And that's what he did. He wrote his intention down. Even his experiment, the water, write it down. And then they hold one thought, that one thought, not for 5 minutes, not for 10 minutes, and I've been on these imprinting sessions. 45 minutes. Can you hold a thought for 45 minutes? I can't. My one eye is like, is the time up? And I realized I cannot be part of this imprinting team. And he even told me, I don't think so, Nisha. You just go write those papers or something. So, in that lab, for 45 minutes, they hold one thought. Change the pH of water, whatever, And this is amazing what Tiller said at the end of that statement. Thy will be done. I have never heard that in a science protocol. Clinical science, thy will be done. He's asking for the truth to be shown to him. Don't you see that? Thy will be done. He was open to complete failure. It doesn't matter. But thy will be done. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about these kinds of protocols. It's fantastic. Next. So that's the intention statement, and it's really reads like a science thing. Don't worry. Next. He takes this imprinted thing, wraps it in aluminum foil because you want to protect it from light and leakage, information leakage, and shipped it to Minnesota. The receiving lab had no idea of the directive of that intention. They didn't know if the pH was supposed to go up or down or what. No idea. They unwrap this thing, and then they plug it next to a bottle or a container of water. Not touching, just that, like that. That's it. pH is monitored. That's your experimental setup. How simple can you get? Frugal science. Okay? We're going to see if this thing works. It took a little while. Initially, a few weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months, and this is what happened. Next slide. This is what happened. Can you believe this? Can you believe this? Somebody changed the pH of water with a device. His intention worked. What about lowering the pH. Next. And he's done this hundreds of times, okay? Hundreds of times. It's really, when I saw this day, at first I thought, change water with a device. I mean, how silly is this? But it's not silly. This is showing something that with your intention, you have the ability to change materials. And water is human being. That is our biology. It's aqueous. And from water comes enzymes. From enzymes comes whole living beings. This, if you can do this, and he did do that. He did do enzyme, alkaline phosphatase, and then he went on to show his intention with a living fruit fly, a whole living system. And what's interesting with the fruit fly, if I may share a little story, Tiller does not wish to harm any animal. In medicine, we do a lot of things to animals. Okay? Tiller, the way he constructed his statements was such that the fruit fly would thrive, would mature faster, be happier fruit flies. I mean, okay, I thought, okay, that shows the kind of heart of a scientist. Next slide. This thing is not inert anymore. We think it's, in my medical mind, these things are there, objects, toasters, printer cartridges. So what? It's not so what. In Tiller's labs and in his hands, these things are not inert. They're metastable. That's a thermodynamic term. It's excited beyond its ground state. And as the subtle energy leaks away, it returns to ground state where no change happens to the material. Okay? So I hope if there's one thing you can take away, objects can be metastable by our actions. They are excited by our intention. So it's not an inert piece of object at all. Next. There was something else he monitored. Whenever you do experiments changing materials, you want, especially, monitoring water pH, exquisitely 0.01 pH unit, that's pretty detailed. It's not a litmus paper. This is a digital monitor. You want to monitor the lab environment, its temperature, its, the water pH, how it responds. You need to know your environment to some extent. That's thermodynamics, okay? That's what he did. And something very odd was going on in that lab space. Folks, this is amazing, because this is the bridge to understanding the relics. So listen up. If you're falling asleep at the back, now you can wake up. Okay. Next slide. Okay. Temperature fluctuations, very rhythmic, like ba-doom, ba-doom. Look at this. This is not a normal air current. I mean, we can all feel the air conditioning here. If you put a meter, it's all over. It's not like this. This is very anomalous. And a huge amount. This is not random air. And if you wanted to know, if this is truly, air currents doing funky things, you put a fan. Next slide. If it was air currents, you put a fan, what would happen? Obliterate these immediately. No, they continued. This was not air. This was something else. This is what we call physicist gold. You have stumbled into something that has not been observed in nature thus far. It's non-dispersive. This medium, whatever it is non-dispersive. You can put a fan, you can do whatever you want. The waves, they're non-dispersive. That's another word. It's a thermodynamic word. And when he looked at the water temperature and the pH, it was doing anomalous behavior too, very rhythmic. Okay? This is really odd. Next slide. Now, you can take those waveforms and do a mathematical technique called Fourier transform, routine stuff. And Fourier is a kind of calculation where you take complex waveform and you condense, you extract vital information. So that's what Tiller did. He's a mathematical genius, you know. Next slide. And this is what he found. The air temperature, the water temperature, the water pH all nested. Like, look at that. It's like the whole room is pulsing, singing, or doing something. And the materials were like harmonics. Yeah, that's a good word, harmonics. Next slide. Your intention matters, and intention does work. When I say work, I don't mean it works. It has energy to perform some work. If you want to change water's pH in your lab, you have to put some energy in it. You have to zap the water, and people do this. You know, you can put chemicals in it, or you put electric rods in it, and you have some energy, and you will have hydrogen ions, and you have altered the pH water. Where did this energy come from? Intention was working. It was a source of energy of a very different kind. Next slide. Okay, so I have to give you a little background into thermodynamics. So forgive this little technicality, but I think you'll have fun. And you don't need to know math. Next slide. It's not quantum theory. Nope, thank God. Next slide. It's the law. Thermodynamic is the law. Folks, if there's the third thing you can write, please write thermodynamic is the law. Next slide. And this is the law that scientists trust more than any other. Quantum theory, even look at that, theory. It's incomplete. Terrific theory. Has really helped us usher in 21st century, but it is a theory. It's still being worked on. There's lots of holes in it. Thermodynamics has been called the Shakespeare's of science. Okay, next slide. So you don't need mathematics. I mean, hey, I don't have pedagogy in physics. I had to sit with books and Next slide. But I remember the day, this is Tiller's writing. He came, he puts his brown hat. We used to meet every Thursday, you know. He puts his hat down there and I said, okay, what are we going to talk about today? He says, thermodynamics. And he pulled out this paper and he wrote this. And I thought, oh boy. Okay. He says, Nisha, learn thermodynamics because it's the law. Everything, closed systems, open systems, human systems, your brain system, your steam engine, it's the same. It all obeys the law, and it's true. I was going to launch into a story about Dan Brown's new book, Origins, which is based on thermodynamics, okay? That the MIT physicist Jeremy England has shown that you can use thermodynamic laws to create self-organizing systems in the lab. Hello, folks. We can put a bunch of soup in a petri dish and put energy on it, and guess what it does? It becomes molecules that we recognize as the first primordial molecules, all based on thermodynamics. Thermodynamics is old.